Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. The Russian Defense Ministry stated that it has captured 265 Ukrainian soldiers who were hiding in Azovstal steel complex, the last stronghold of Ukrainian resistance in Mariupol. Sweden and Finland, the non-aligned Nordic countries, have officially applied to join the world's biggest military alliance, making a historic shift on Wednesday. Fuel station in Sri Lankan capital of Colombo dried up on Tuesday, leading to queues forming outside gas stations. US President Joe Biden paid a visit to Buffalo, the city northeast of New York State, to give speech to the families of the victims, where he said the Buffalo racist killing was an act of terrorism. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. The Russian Defense Ministry stated that it has captured 265 Ukrainian soldiers who were hiding in the Azovstal steel complex, the last stronghold of Ukrainian resistance in Mariupol. Sam Brukan has more to tell about this story.
Moscow announced on Tuesday the surrender of 265 Ukrainian soldiers entrenched in the Azovstal steelworks, the last pocket of resistance against the Russian army in the Ukrainian port of Mariupol, evoking an upcoming exchange with Russian prisoners.
Yesterday began the surrender of militants of the nationalist unit Azov and Ukrainian soldiers blocked at the Azovstal factory in Mariupol. Over the past 24 hours, 265 fighters have laid down their arms and surrendered, including 51 seriously injured. All those who need medical attention were sent to a hospital in the city of Novozovsk, Donetsk People's Republic.
In turn, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says in a video that he's doing his best to bring back the heroes of Azovstal steelworks.
We hope to save the lives of our guys. Among them, they are seriously injured. They are being treated. I want to emphasize that Ukraine needs its Ukrainian heroes alive. This is our principle. I think these words can be heard by those concerned. We continue to do what is necessary to bring our guys home. It is delicate and takes time.
The total capture of Mariupol, a strategic city in the Sea of Azov, besieged since the beginning of March by the Russians, would be an important step forward for Moscow in this conflict. It would allow them to control a strip of territory ranging from the Crimean Peninsula, which the Russian annexed in 2014, to the territories of Donbas, east, already in the hands of the pro-Russian separatists.
And for an in-depth analysis on the situation, we asked Mr. Valentin Yakushik, an international relations, earlier in our special coverage, and he said this letter.
As to Ukrainian soldiers who became or will become very soon prisoners of war in Mariupol, there was a decision taken by Ukrainian leadership that fighting in Mariupol will stop because of any possibility to continue this fighting. Well, Russians are now taking the wounded towards their hospitals. They are treating them quite well, according to international norms. They have to do that now because in the previous phases of war, there were many cases when absolute misbehavior of soldiers as to civilians, as to others connected with looting, with destruction. So Russians now try to show that they act according to the rules.
8 people were killed and 12 others were injured after Russia launched a missile attack on the village of Desna in the Chernihiv region of northern Ukraine. The region's governor said that Russia fired 4 missiles at around 5 a.m. local time. He added that 2 rockets hit buildings in the village. Ukraine says the war with Moscow is entering a protracted phase, with the Russians seeking full control of the Donbas region. During a press briefing, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby praised the Ukrainians for showing first resistance in the Donbas region.
But it's clear that the Russians still have an intent here to encircle and to occupy the Donbass and the eastern part of the country. I would add, Lita, that they have not succeeded in that. Mariupol aside, the fighting still goes on in the Donbass. There's a lot of back and forth. It's a very, as we say at the Pentagon, it's a kinetic fight. There's a lot going on still there, and the Ukrainians are still putting up a very stiff resistance in towns and villages throughout the Donbass.
Moscow said Wednesday it was expelling 34 employees of French diplomatic missions in a retaliatory move following the expulsion of Russian diplomats from France as part of joint European action over Russian campaign in Ukraine. Moscow's made announcements after summoning France's ambassador to Russia, Pierre Levy, and telling him that the expulsion of 41 employees of Russian diplomatic missions was a provocative and unfounded decision, the statement said. United Nations officials said the UN chief Antonio Guterres is expected to reveal on Wednesday that he is holding talks with Moscow, Kiev, Ankara, Washington, and Brussels. The discussion aimed at restoring Ukraine grain shipments and reviving fertilizers exports from Russia and Belarus. Earlier, G7 ministers have held urgent talks about trying to open routes through Romania and Baltic ports. Speaking at a meeting dedicated to the oil sector, Russian President Vladimir Putin stressed that Russia will have to reorganize its energy sector in face of European sanctions.
The rejection of the Russian energy resources means that systematically, in a long-term perspective, Europe becomes the region with the highest cost of energy resources in the world. The exchanges in the oil market are tectonic in nature, and it is, of course, unlikely that we will be able to do business again as before according to the old model. Under the new conditions, it is important not only to extract the oil, but also to build the whole chain up to the final consumer. At the same time, the state will, as before, do everything in its power to create the conditions for the changing of business model, for companies to improve logistics, to provide a system of payment in national currency.
Sweden and Finland, the non-aligned Nordic countries, have officially applied to join the world's biggest military alliance, making a historic shift on Wednesday. A move is driven by security concerns of the Russian-Ukraine crisis. The 30-nation bloc Secretary General warmly welcomed the request by Finland and Sweden, hailing it as a momentous moment.
And I warmly welcome the requests by Finland and Sweden to join NATO. You are our closest partners, and your membership in NATO would increase our shared security. The applications you have made today are an historic step. Allies will now consider the next steps on their path to NATO. The security interests of all allies have to be taken into account. And we are determined to work through all issues and reach rapid conclusions.
Finland, Sweden, as well as other neutral countries, have been participating in NATO military exercises for many years. NATO takes their territory into account when planning military advances to the east. So in this sense, there is probably not much difference. Let's see how their territories is used in practice in the North Atlantic Alliance.
Our only expectation from our allies is that they first understand our sensitivities, then respect them, and if possible, support them. So what are our sensitivities? Protecting our borders from terrorist attacks.
To a different matter now, the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune called in Istanbul on Turkish businessmen to invest in Algeria, stressing that all fields are open within the framework of an integrated economy for the benefit of both countries. In a speech delivered during the work of the Algerian-Turkish Business and Investment Forum as part of his state visit, to President Tebboune stressed that Algeria has all the financial, natural and human capabilities in front of Turkish investors in order to raise the volume of investments.
The Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune is still in his state visit to Turkey for the third and final day, at the invitation of his Turkish counterpart, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. On Monday, Algeria and Turkey signed 15 agreements and memoranda of understanding covering several areas and sectors of cooperation, such as energy and mining, finance, trade, industry, information and communication, science and technology, education, environment, and the fight against cross-border organized crime. According to President Tebboune, the signed agreements will boost the privileged historical relations between the two countries.
At the outset, I would like to express our deep satisfaction with the important steps we have achieved together, which have been added to the distinguished balance of our historical relations and have strengthened the course of strategic partnership that we're keen to lay its foundation on the political, economic and cultural levels and in all areas available to us.
The first visit of Algerian President to Turkey in more than 17 years comes in a tense regional and international situation and a worsening global crisis that had a direct impact on the Sahel and Africa, in which Algeria plays leading roles. Algiers and Ankara agreed to join efforts to uproot terrorism scourge that's threatening the security of all Sahel countries.
Turkey and Algeria, which play an important role in ensuring peace and stability in the African continent, are determined to strengthen their cooperation in the field of defense industries. The two countries have decided to establish a high-level cooperation council to take their relations to a new level. Economic and trade relations between the two countries are developing day by day.
On the last day of this visit to Turkey, the two heads of state inaugurated the proceedings of the Algerian-Turkish Business Forum held in Istanbul, where President Tebboune was honored by Istanbul University.
Speaking at the Brussels Economic Forum on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen said that costs for the conflict in Ukraine keep mounting despite funding efforts from Western allies. Janet Yellen called on allies to provide more financial support to Ukraine, though she did not mention it specifically. Yellen appeared to be referring to the Marshall Plan, which was financing projects backed by the United States following World War II, designed to help rebuild European economies.
Ukraine's immediate financing needs are significant. Due to the ingenuity and bravery of Ukrainian officials, their government continues to function. But in the months until tax collection can resume at pace, Ukraine needs budget funding to pay soldiers, employees, and pensioners, as well as to operate an economy that meets its citizens' basic needs.
To Great Britain now, British Foreign Minister Liz Truss announced that a new law would be introduced to change the post-Brexit trade deal for Northern Ireland. The EU has signalled it could trigger a trade war and pursue a legal challenge against the UK. Its government proceeds with its plans to unilaterally override parts of the Northern Ireland.
Our shared objective has to be to find a solution that can command the broadest possible cross-community support for years to come and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. That is why I am announcing our intention to introduce legislation in the coming weeks to make changes in the protocol. Our preference remains a negotiated solution with the EU, and in parallel with the legislation being introduced, we remain open to further talks if we can achieve the same outcome through negotiated settlement.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has criticized the bad management of authorities, which worsened the country's outbreak as the number of the known cases crosses 1.7 million. During a meeting of the ruling party Politburo on Tuesday, Kim said that there was immaturity in the state capacity for coping with the crisis. The slammed the non-positive attitude, slackness and non-activity of state leading officials. The official Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday and on matter that the World Health Organization expressed concern about the devastating effects of Omicron on the unvaccinated population of North Korea and reiterated its offer of vaccines and medical equipment.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, has announced through their state media their first outbreak of COVID-19, with more than 1.4 million suspected cases since late April. WHO is deeply concerned at the risk of further spread of COVID-19 in the country, particularly because the population is unvaccinated.
Fuel stations in the Sri Lankan capital of Colombo dried up on Tuesday, leading to queues forming outside gas station. Sri Lanka Prime Minister said that the nation urgently needs $75 million of foreign currency in the next few days to pay for essential imports. He also said that the central bank would have to print money to pay government wages. It's worth mentioning that India offered on Sunday the debt-struck nation 12 shipments of fuel equal to 400,000 metric tons of diesel. However, the delivery drivers said they were unable to get any fuel. The United States will begin to ease some energy sanctions on Venezuela. The step aims to encourage resume negotiations between U.S.-backed opposition and the government of the President Nicolas Maduro. U.S. government officials said that the limited changes will allow Chevron Corp to negotiate its license with the state-owned oil company Petróleos de Venezuela, but not to drill or export any petroleum of Venezuelan origin. The Biden administration on Monday announced a partial lift on Cuban sanctions. The move is intended to expand channels of communication, travel, and economic support between the United States and Cuba. And the Trump administration U.S. travel to Cuba was restricted, and Cuban commercial business were sanctioned by both the Department of Treasury and the Department of Commerce. Nabil Khazini, what follow?
The United States announced the lifting of certain restrictions targeting Cuba. The decision sparks a lively debate as the issue is politically sensitive in the US. The announcements were immediately hailed as a small step in the right direction, but of a limited scope.
The Cuban economy is a basket case. It simply doesn't work. It hasn't worked well for 60 years. And for the United States to add to that misery by shutting down financial aid from families and shutting down the ability of families to visit doesn't bring Cuba any closer to freedom and economic development. It just adds misery to the Cuban people.
Lifting sanctions against Cuba means the White House can extend economic support to the country. The Biden administration will also increase the number of flights between the United States and the island, authorizing services to cities other than Cuban capital Havana. The United States is home to a large community of immigrants of Cuban origin.
I think this is not the start of a détente. This is the emergency response that the United States has found to end the migration crisis.
In Havana, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bruno Rodriguez, acknowledged that these were positive measures, but which in no way modify the blockade, nor the main measures of economic siege taken by Donald Trump.
This is very good news for all Cubans, especially for those who have relatives here and in the United States, because the separation between the family is very difficult.
Initiated in 1962, the US embargo against Cuba is the most enduring trade blockade in modern history. The Cuban government frequently blames the United States for the economic problems of the South American country.
The U.S. President Joe Biden paid a visit to Buffalo, the city northeast of New York State, to give a speech to the families of the victims, where he said the Buffalo racist killing was an act of terrorism. Islam Seed on what follow.
After the mass shooting in Buffalo neighborhood by racist slaughter, who killed at least 10 African Americans in a supermarket on Saturday, the U.S. President Joe Biden, alongside his wife, paid tribute to the victims on the scene of the massacre on Tuesday.
I think it's a great thing that Joe has come and Mrs. Dr. Biden. You know, we need as much support as well as the community as well as from our White House. And it's something that all of the presidents do, but I think Joe Biden, I have found him to be very caring and concerned.
I don't think it matters, honestly, because him coming as the president, it looked to me as like a publicity stunt, just for him to gain followers or whatever. I don't know.
During a visit to the city in New York, Joe Biden began his speech with words of comfort for the families of the victims, describing the Buffalo racist killing as an act of terrorism and condemned the poison of the white supremacist theory.
What happened here is simple and straightforward. Terrorism. Terrorism. Domestic terrorism. White supremacy is a poison. It's a poison running through it. It really is.
Evoking this racist notion of a great replacement, Joe Biden called for Americans to reject and condemn this lie, which always brings sorrow and fears to many families and individuals in the country.
We're thinking of you. Hold on to each other tightly. Stick together. You'll get through this. And we'll make Buffalo and the United States a better place to live than it is today.
The Democrat has long called on Congress to ban assault weapons like the one used by the killer. This is what New Zealand did after the 2019 racist killing of mosques in Christchurch, a massacre inspired by the Buffalo's criminal.
You can't prevent people from being radicalized to violence, but we can address the relentless exploitation of the internet to recruit and mobilize terrorism.
The Gun Violence Archive has already counted more than 200 mass shootings in the United States this year, during which at least 4 people were injured or killed.
Taiwan Presbyterian Church leaders held a press conference to condemn the shooting at California church frequented by the Taiwanese immigrants. University professors have also called for increased security and monitoring of pro-China groups in Taiwan.
Even though we find ourselves on opposite sides with different opinions, but under the universal values of freedom and democracy, we can share our opinion and we can listen, but we condemn the use of violence to harm the other side. This incident has led leaders of the Presbyterian Church in Taiwan and its affiliates to consider whether we need to know more about our worshippers and whether we need to strengthen church security measures.
Libya's parliament appointed Prime Minister Fathi Bashagha. Speaking from the central port city of Sirte, the Prime Minister said he would not resort to violence for control of the capital and that his government would be operating from Sirte from Wednesday. Tensions between Libya's parliament mandates government headed by Fathi Bashagha and his rival Abu Hamid Dabeiba escalated after Bashagha attempted to enter the capital Tripoli on Tuesday, but the tension eased in the Libyan capital. Libyan Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dabeiba said in a televised speech that his government will cede power only to an elect administration following an attempt to eviction by a rival Prime Minister.
Today's scene was very sad and painful. When I toured this city to inspect the trace of the safe chaos that was unleashed at dawn, we assure all diplomatic missions, country representatives and embassies that the security situation is stable in Tripoli and that they can carry out their normal duties.
On Wednesday morning, local Palestinian media reported that Zionist occupation army stormed the city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank, which witnessed on the 11th of May the assassination of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. The Palestinian press agency Safa stated that dozens of Zionist military vehicles stormed the Jenin camp from several directions, indicating that armed clashes had taken place between the occupation army and the Palestinian resistance. According to reports, a pair of congressional Democrats are circulating a letter demanding an FBI investigation into the killing of the Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. The draft letter requested both an FBI investigation and a determination by the State Department on whether the killing of the American journalist in Zionist-occupied territory violated any U.S. laws. Wildfires that have been raging in New York and New Mexico for more than a month have destroyed homes and caused people to flee as high winds and dry weather threaten to spread the fires much further. The flames have already destroyed more than 800 square kilometers of Ponderosa woods across the state, leaving firefighters hoping for a respite in this dry, windy weather to help them tackle the savage blaze. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.